The Intercaterus states, among other works well-pleasing to the divine majesty and cherished of our heart, this assuredly ranks highest, that in our times especially the Catholic faith and the Christian religion be exalted and be everywhere increased and spread, that the health of souls be cared for, and that barbarous nations be overthrown and brought to the faith itself. We assign to you and your heirs and successors, kings of Castile and Leon, all islands and midlands found and to be found, discovered and to be discovered towards the west and south, by drawing and establishing a line from the north to the south, the said line to be distant 100 leagues towards the west and south from any of the islands commonly known as the Azores and Cape Verde. One I ever heard about something called the Doctrine of Discovery? Well, let me tell you, this ain't a joke. This was a legal and spiritual contract signed by both popes and kings. A document that said, if land is ruled by Christians, you may claim it, take it, enslave the people, and call it righteousness. And you know what? Barbados was one of them jewels that they claim, paid for in the lives of we ancestors. I am Zana Monique, and this is Let We Call It We Baj-Story. The Doctrine of Discovery comes from a series of official papal bulls or spiritual decrees issued by the Catholic Church in the 15th century. Dum Diversus, 1452, by Pope Nicholas V, Romanus Pontifex, 1455, also by Nicholas V, Intercaterus, 1493, by Pope Alexander VI, just after Columbus landed in the Caribbean. These decrees gave Christian monarchs the so-called divine right to conquer any lands not ruled by Christians. So if you're brown, black, or indigenous, your land getting taken away and your people getting turned into property apparently. Imagine that. God's name used to justify slavery, theft, unaliving, and colonization. At first, Spain and Portugal used to use the Doctrine of Discovery to justify conquering South America, the Caribbean, and Africa. But soon, England, though Protestant, adopted the same ideology. In 1625, English explorers claimed Barbados, and by 1627, them settled it. And according to them, Barbados was a vacant land. But that didn't make no sense to me. Barbados had indigenous people, the Arawaks, and yes, they had Kalinago too. The Kalinago may not have stayed as long, but them came. They traded, they passed through, and they knew this land. Even the name Ishiruganaim come from them. Petroglyphs, pottery, oral stories prove it. Kalinago from Dominica and St. Vincent came regularly. Some were likely still on the island when the English arrived. So how the islands suddenly get empty then? This is just my hypothesis, but maybe if the Doctrine of Discovery say that you're not a Christian, your presence didn't count, and the indigenous peoples, etc., weren't Christian, then the claim would be that there are no people, and that would have been justified. Let me know what you think about that down in the comment section, and while you're at it, don't forget to subscribe. Alright then. This doctrine covered the transatlantic slavery, the theft of land and natural resources, forced religious conversion, and mass unaliving. It gave birth to spiritual warfare. Europe run the world like a Christian empire, and Africa and indigenous lives became the currency. Let's call it out proper. King James I was born in 1566. He became King of Scotland as James VI at just 13 months old, then King of England and Ireland in 1603, uniting the crowns, you know. He reigned until 1625. Now, James saw himself as a man of divine purpose. He believed kings ruled by divine right, and under his rule, both political and spiritual control was his goal. So in 1604, he commissioned what would become the King James Version of the Bible, completed in 1611. Now that was meant to unify Christians in England and suppress the Catholic influence, but it also became a tool. Over time, plantation owners, missionaries, and colonial governments used the verses from that Bible to justify enslavement. Servants, obey your masters, Ephesians 6:5. Cursed be Canaan, a servant of servants, Genesis 9:25, twisted into the curse of Ham. All the while, parts about liberation and justice get ignored or twisted. After King Charles I was disappeared in 1649, Oliver Cromwell took over, and he wasn't the king. He called himself the Lord Protector, but he acted like a militant preacher. Cromwell believed in Puritanism, a strict radical form of Protestantism. He wanted to cleanse England spiritually and politically by any means necessary. Under his rule, thousands of Irish and Scottish prisoners were deported to Barbados or Barbados and to other countries as forced labor. African slavery increased dramatically to replace white indentured workers. Cromwell also saw colonialization as a divine mission, civilizing others through control. You could say that Cromwell helped shape the mindset of religious supremacy mixed with brutality, a mindset that still echoes in the power structures today. Let me know what you think about that in the comment section below. Barbados became the first fully plantation-based colony in the English-speaking Caribbean. Sugar, whips, chains. Then in 1661, the Barbados Slave Code was passed under King Charles II. It defined Africans as property with no legal personhood. And you know what make it worse? King Charles and his brother James, later James II, personally invested in the Royal African Company, which trafficked enslaved Africans and branded them with RAC and DY, Duke of York. In 1823, the U.S. Supreme Court used the Doctrine of Discovery in Johnson versus McIntosh to deny indigenous land rights. It's still cited in law. In 2005, Justice Ruth Ginsburg referenced it again in City of Sherrill versus Oneida Indian Nation, saying, under the Doctrine of Discovery, fee title to the lands occupied by Indians when the colonists arrived became vested in sovereign, first the discovering European nation, and later the original states and the United States. In 2023, only 2 years ago, the Vatican finally repudiated the doctrine, but them still unofficially revoked the papal bulls. So technically, the documents that justified enslaving we ancestors still standing in the Vatican archives. So, wanna know, see? This actually is not done. It's not done in spirit, it is not done in law, and it certainly is not done in truth. Unfortunately, Barbados was a front line in a spiritual war disguised as salvation. And we, the descendants, are still living in its aftermath. But now we know, and now I hope we will speak. Comment, like, and share, and do all the things that you know that you can do in order to make sure that we all know our Baj-Story. Remember, it is upon our ancestors' shoulders we stand. You have been listening to Let We Call It We Baj-Story. I'm Zana Monique. Remember, respect, and revive. And I can talk to winner in the next episode.